Anyway, hey guys, if there's any questions while people are logging in here, feel free. But I've got a pretty full end of year agenda for us today, so
I do have one or two questions. I'll take brief,
go right
as
ahead.
brief an answer as care to give. Number
I'm
one,
not sure I know how to give a brief answer.
I realize that you always give more information than we could possibly utilize. I appreciate that, Master Smith or Oliver.
Yes.
Question number one, is there a script or an approach to getting your rack cards into local businesses?
Yeah. Let me give you a middle length answer to that question. There's a gentleman in the industry. His name is God, Bob, what's his name? Jimmy Mack.
Jimmy Mack. Yeah, I was going to say Freddie Mac.
Nicest human being in the world. And he used to be the lead box guy, and now he's the rack card guy. And what you can do is pay him, I think, $1,000 a day, and he'll come out to your school with a guarantee that he'll place 100 lead boxes. And the reason I bring him up, by the way, is not to encourage you to pay him $1,000, although he's worth it. But I convinced a lot of our local schools that I just couldn't get to do this, to hire Jimmy Mack. And then before they hired Jimmy Mack, I said, let me explain how this is going to go. I said, what do you mean? I said, the only reason I'm getting you to pay this guy is you haven't done this yet because you think it's hard. And what I want you to know is within 45 minutes of working with Jimmy Mack, you're going to be pissed off that you spent money on a plane ticket to follow him around to do this because it's so damn easy, and that it's just not a big deal. And you've been not doing it because you think it's a big deal. And they like laughed and like, oh yeah, right. But but he'll get 100 out, right? Say, oh yeah, he'll get 100. He'll probably get more than 100. And so he shows up, and they work for like half a day the first day, and half a day the second day. And by the time he's done, they have 100 of them out. And one of the owners called me middle of the first day and said, I see what you're talking about now. I said, what do you mean? He said, I see why you said we'd be pissed off that we paid somebody within the first couple of hours. I said, so you see how easy it is? Oh, yeah. And literally, what he does, he just walks into, and I'm not exaggerating even a tiny bit, is you fill your trunk or fill the back of your SUV or whatever the hell it is with these things, and you take a right out to your front door and hit every business in your shopping center, and then you go across the street, and then you go diagonally, and then you go diagonally, and you keep making concentric circles, until you've got 300 or 400 of them out. And literally all you do is you walk into the business, and I don't care if it's a dry cleaners or a Dairy Queen or whatever, and say, hey, I've got a martial arts school next door or down the street, and I wanted to see if we could work on helping promote each other, and wanted to know if you have any coupons or anything. We have a big student body and a lot of friends and parents and everything that come in a couple, 3 times a week. Want to see if there's anything I can do to help you guys out. And sometimes they say, yes, we have these coupons or this promotion. And sometimes they say, well, I can't think of anything right now. Say, well, keep it in mind. Here's my card. The other thing is we're putting these rack cards out. And I was wondering if I could put them here by the cash register, if you have someplace that we could leave them out here for your customers to see. And then anybody who I'll come back periodically and check on them and make sure they don't run out and so forth. You get like 90% of them that say yes, right? Now, admittedly, what you get is every now and then the 16-year-old high school kid says yes. And then the manager shows up and says, what the hell is that? And he throws it away. And then when you go back next time, it's gone. But the thing not to do is not to lose any sleep over it. And the actual holders themselves, you can spend like $8 or $10 for a nice clear plexiglass one, but you can spend like 80 cents and get paper holders for the cards. And by the way, I can't believe I have to say this, but I was talking to one of our schools one time, and I said, what have you done marketing wise? And they said, well, I did rack cards. I said, well, how many did you get out? They said 300. I said, great, you got them out in 300 locations. They said, no, I put 300 cards out. Well, each holder holds like 40 or 50 or something like that. So when we say 300, we're talking about in Dairy Queen and in Domino's and in the dry cleaners and in the orthodontist and the orthopedic and everything else. We're not talking about, how many cards. And Ben, once you get them out, which is the easiest thing in the world, all you have to do is keep a list of where you put them out. But if you just take a right out the door and do concentric circles, 6 weeks from now, you walk into all the businesses in a concentric circle and you take the cards. And if there's a rack card in there, you refill it. And if there's not a rack card in there, you ask them if they would mind putting one in, and you just keep making the route every 6 weeks. So it's not a big deal. And the only distinction I've ever seen really that we can hone in on, of course, having like real stats, trackable numbers on this is difficult. But the only distinction I've ever seen is periodically change the look of the card. In other words, I have one that's predominantly green, and then the next time it's predominantly red, next time it's predominantly blue. Have it look different from 10 feet away. And mostly it's the color scheme, but you can change the photo, change the headline. But just what they see from standing in line at Dairy Queen or walking in the store, whatever it might be, if you don't change it, most of these businesses, just like we do, have the same clientele that comes in over and over. And if it looks the same, they stop seeing it. And if you change it, it starts to be visible for them. Every time it changes, it's visible. It's the same reason why if you put a big banner on the school, you should put a banner up for like 6 weeks and then you should completely change it and put a different one. Because if you have the same banner up there year round, they don't see it anymore. Right. So, and again, the biggest thing is what's most visible, the predominant color, maybe the cover photo, maybe the headline, but just so it looks different from 5 or 6 feet away. Is that a good answer to that question?
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. And
Yes,
what was
sir.
the-
Good
In
job.
regard to the rack card, do we do a seasonal offer? Because that's what I was always doing. So kind of driving myself a little nuts with that.
Sure. In all honesty, I'm not sure it makes any difference.
Okay.
The only thing as far as rack cards that I've been able to track is that it needs to be different, right? Now, having tracked the offer and all this stuff in like major advertising, right? TV, newspaper, one thing or another, is changing the offer periodically always seemed to rejuvenate the ad. If it had been out so much where it was really kind of saturated, right? So that to me, I guess, is the only thing. So if in January you do a New Year's special, whatever it is, and in summer you have a summer special, and you have a back to school special, it tends to rejuvenate the offer a little bit. If people have
And
seen-
you're changing the colors anyway. That's why I would always do the seasonal with the colors, because then I knew that I would automatically be changing them on a regular basis.
And does the offer itself change at all?
Well, sure.
Because we've been running the 2 weeks free for a year. It hasn't petered.
We
Then
kept
it-
ours the same because it was more the color and the seasonal thing rather than what the offer was, I think.
I agree. The only place I would have a different opinion is if you're running something over and over again and it starts tapering off, right? When it starts tapering off, you need to make a complete change. And changing the look, the feel, the headline, and the offer are all things that you can play with to rejuvenate it. From the standpoint, Gustavo, coming up with a seasonal offer and every time it's different, and one time it's a month and this, and the other time it's 2 weeks, and the other time it's 2 lessons. If they're interested and pay attention to it, they're not evaluating quarter to quarter whether it's better to come in for a month, 2 weeks, 2 lessons. They're really not paying attention to any of that stuff, right? Mostly what it is if they see it over and over and over again, you want them to pay attention again because it looks like something different. Right.
Okay.
And the getting hyper stressed about $14.95, $9.95, 2 free lessons, all that kind of stuff. It does lead us into a different conversation, which I'll keep brief, is there's an awful lot of industry lore that's evolved over the years on what the perfect offer is. Among the BJJ schools for years is everything had to be the 30-day free offer. And I can tell you where that came from is Lloyd Irving, who was doing a lot of coaching for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools, came to my marketing boot camps a couple of times. And at the time, that's what we were doing. And he put it online and it worked for him. And then suddenly that became this is the thing that works best. And this is the thing that works best for BJJ. This is the best thing that works for schools. Years ago, Bill Clark, and then later, Steve LaValle, probably picking it up from Bill Clark, everybody was doing a VIP offer, a 1 month free VIP offer. And it became industry lore that was like the thing to do. And anytime you hear a coach or consultant telling you this is the only thing to do and this is the thing that's best, hell, about half, probably about 80% of the time it's from something they heard me say 10 years ago, but it's almost all horseshit. The offer, I think, mostly is dependent upon the context, right? If I'm doing a charitable fundraiser where I'm trying to raise money for St. Jude's or Children's Hospital or something like that, then it makes sense for it to be a paid offer. And if it's a paid offer, it might make sense for it to be a little longer offer. So the charitable fundraiser offer we tended to do was 4 or 5 weeks with a uniform for $29 or $49 or something like that. The summer special offer we used to do was $99, first for 3 months, then for 6 weeks, and then for a month. But if it's just the normal stuff you're doing, Gustavo, on Facebook and coupon mailers and letters and so forth, the 2 free week offer is the offer that I have used as evergreen for probably 25 years, and it's worked just fine. And I've heard all kinds of different people. Perello was another one who picked up on that, but there was a backstory for that. Is they were setting up websites with a payment system on the website, and their deal was they kept the money that people paid for the offer, so they had an incentive to proselytize the offer. A couple of other chain owners that had independent owner operators picked up on that and did the same thing, so that they could put out the thing, keep the money for the introductory offer and hand them off. And of course, Groupon, that's what Groupon does, except they give you back half of the money. And I always look at it this way. If I had my druthers, I would have a short paid offer. And if I wanted to open the spigot as big as possible, I have a free offer. And so those two are a little bit at odds, right? And the longer the introductory offer gets, 90 days, 6 weeks, the harder it is to convert them into a regular enrollment, is it puts another roadblock in the way. Now, it can be done fine. We were getting, when Groupon was big, we were getting really good at converting Groupon offers. But generally, the longer offer, especially for staff, throws a little bit of a barrier in their way. But you use a longer offer when it's appropriate for the medium. A Groupon offer is a little bit longer, is more effective. A fundraiser offer is more effective. A fundraiser for a school or a charity or something like that.
What
But-
about referral, sir? Should the referral be maybe a little longer? In other words, everybody's coming in off of free 2 weeks. What do you think about a month free or am I putting up another block?
Again, I would go with context, right? Is if I'm running a birthday party and I'm bringing people in, I'm going to do 2 lessons, right? On the other hand, if I'm printing a nice embossed certificate in a what do they call it, foil envelope to give to people with a high value as they're going to gift, I might make that a longer offer and include the uniform with it, right? And so I think it depends on context, Gustavo. The longer offer gives people a reason to have an objection. to do it, for a longer period of time. And by the way, industry lore too, there's a lot of idiots running around, Bozo Consultant Explosion, who, and Perella was one of these guys where they would bring people in on a month offer and then basically have the credit card and tell them if you stay in 30 days, we'll start billing you, and wouldn't actually do an enrollment or renewal process. That's stupid. But on the referral offers, all the way back to the old VIP thing, the way that Bill Clark did it, the way that Steve LaValle did it, the way that I did it, etc., was always either a first lesson or a second lesson enrollment. If it was an adult, it was a first lesson enrollment. If it was a child, it was a second lesson enrollment. And it was always same as the Groupon offer that worked, is it was always, since you have the VIP pass for a free month, the normal enrollment is $600. We give you a $400 discount for using your free month certificate. And then, so it was just the same presentation that we do now, more or less. There are variations. I mean, some people would say you get the first month free, and then the billing starts, but it was the same thing. Because what you find is, if they come in for 30 days or come in for 90 days, and you just give them the schedule and let them train for 30, 60, or 90 days, most of them don't enroll. If you schedule every class by appointment and do the normal enrollment process at the optimal time, which for an adult is probably after the first lesson, for a kid is probably after the second lesson, assuming you have both parents, then you get a high conversion on those. Does that make sense? So hopefully that wasn't too much information spew, but you get the idea. I don't put a lot of mental energy and stressing about the offer if you've got one that's working.
I have an add-on to rec cards too, sir.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I've done it. I've found tablings. So you get out into the community, you're going to all these different businesses. Most of the business owners are useless. Occasionally you get one that's aggressive and is like, I put together a cruising night in my shopping center and none of the other idiot businesses put tables out. Do you want to come? Or you see the flyers, we have like a downtown district, you go through, you see the flyers for the special events that are coming out. And every time I've done it, I've probably gotten more customers off of the connections I've made in sending out rec cards and getting into different events and finding out about them than I actually have from the cards getting returned.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Can you
Really
explain to
good.
me again what putting a table out means?
That's a bit of a long conversation, but the advertising table that Master Oliver talks about, spin wheel, that's what we mean for a table.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and let me say it differently. The old Tom Peters saying, I think, which he took from Skunk Works or from Sam Walton or someone, was MBWA, management by walking around. Think of it as marketing by walking around. The thing that most people miss is you want to be intimately familiar with your neighborhood and your area. And the more things you do, like just walking into businesses randomly, talking to the owner, finding out what they've got going on, walking around the neighborhood, looking at banners, looking at signs, walking into the local grocery store, pulling flyers off, picking up the local newspapers, you discover a crap load of opportunity if you're looking at it in the right way. And so what you find, Ben, is there are a number of businesses around your area that have the same clientele that you want, right? So like up here in Evergreen, there's a local orthodontist and they do a crap load of business. I don't know, they probably have, 5 or 10 middle school age kids in every hour. Well, if I did something with them, I mean, it would be a land office deal for them and for me, right? If they happen to be close to my school. And it's something that we wouldn't normally think about, but you start walking into all these businesses, you go, oh, wow, Dairy Queen has this special thing that they're doing. We could tie in with that. This business has something going on. This orthodontist would be a perfect fit for me. We used to have a school that was next door to a soccer supply store. Well, hell, they know the coach for every soccer team in a 10-mile radius. At the very least, I want to get that damn list, right? And more importantly, I want to build a relationship with them, have them introduce me to the soccer coaches, one of the biggest co-promotions I ever did, and I'd like to say this was intentional, but it kind of got stumbled into, is, and I remember it vividly, even though it's 30 years ago. Mike Messagaites, he had 2 kids who got their black belt with me, and turned out in conversation with him, he was the chairman of the Rocky Mountain Flag Football Association, which had, at the time, I don't remember, but let's say 6,000 kids, mostly elementary, some into middle school kids, who played flag football in their league across the state. And he came up to me one time and he said, I just thinking about this. I do this, and I love you guys. Let's try to figure out something we could do together. And it ended up with, we got him to send out, he did a letter every year to every participant in the league. And in the letter, he sent them a really nice endorsed mailing with a 1 month certificate and a uniform. And I won't go through the whole thing, but it was, one of the most important things for the kids to keep progressing in soccer and keep progressing in any athletic activity is their mental acuity and their fitness and their agility. And my kids have both gotten their black belts at Mile High Karate. They're the highest integrity, and it's absolutely the best thing that they ever did in order to master soccer, but to be a master of everything else. And he would send this endorsed letter to every one of them with a guest pass and a 1 month free certificate with a uniform, or a 2-week free certificate. I forget. Another one, I remember I was having a conversation with the black belts, and I mentioned in passing a couple of promotions that we had done, but one of the parents was the president of a $780 million electronics chain. And he came up and talked to me, and we ended up he did half pages in their color circulars that went out every Wednesday and every Sunday in the daily newspaper, 800,000 distribution in 2 different newspapers. Basically an ad for us that said, if you buy more than $1,000 during this period of time, you'll get a free $250 value certificate or something like that. But then they had 13 retail stores in the metro area that were an average of 80,000 square feet each. And we spent a couple weekends where they let us set up booths in all 13, all at the same time. And we did a standard booth with everything. But at the cashier stands, anybody who bought $1,000 or more, which, by the way, you couldn't walk into this place short of just buying a wire. It was all high-end TVs, high-end stereos, appliances, one thing or another. You couldn't walk into the place without spending more than $1,000 in almost all cases. So they were giving out the certificates, they were promoting us, and they were letting us do booths. All of it cost me $0. So does that give you a couple of ideas on that, Ben?
Yeah, and if I'm hearing you properly, really, the rack cards is more of a means to the relationship, or the relationship takes priority than over the rack cards.
Well, I wouldn't say that. You just want to make sure you keep both opportunities in place.
Copy that.
My sense has been, just by watching different people's numbers who really did it, 200 to 300 placements maintained properly is good for 3 to 5 enrollments a month. Now, some of those enrollments are going to be, and maybe a lot of them, I saw you on Facebook, I saw you at the park, I saw you at the elementary school, and then I recognized you when I saw that, and it's just the last piece in the chain that gets them to call. But you can't underestimate the synergy of being everywhere, right? So the synergy of being at their elementary school, on the bandit signs, on the banners, in the rack cards, in the thing, a poster in the merchant's window, et cetera. The synergy of that really starts to add up. It becomes, if they see you everywhere, all of a sudden they start to pay attention.
Would you prioritize bandit signs or rack cards in terms of time spent? If I had to allocate very limited amount of time that I have, which would you recommend I go towards?
I wouldn't choose between those two. I do both, and it makes sense to do both, because you fill your back seat with rack cards, you fill your trunk with bandit signs, and while you're making concentric circles around the school, you put out the bandit signs and you put out the rack cards, and it's you're doing double duty. So I wouldn't try to prioritize one over the other. And by the way, the rack card thing, I mean, when I moved here in 1983, knowing nothing else well, I knew a lot actually, coming from Junery and all the studying I did. But one of the things I did, it wasn't rack cards, but it was trifold brochures. I put out trifold brochures in the same kind of holders we do. And I hit all the merchants in my immediate, and this is 1983. I hit all the merchants immediately around, and there were trifold brochures for the school everywhere I could think of to put them. And I don't have any tracking from that far back, but it certainly helped with everything else we did.
Great, thank you.
You bet, you bet. Another quick question before you shift gears here.
Master Oliver,
Yeah.
I know, and I apologize for being a few minutes late getting on. Was having some internet trouble, but Paul had, no, Ben had asked a question posted on our Facebook page. And if I remember correctly, you covered that on the Tuesday meeting.
Oh, yeah, the job description question.
Yeah, and it might take a minute to clarify that, since it seems like more than one person has been having that question to clarify. Also, the title, what he was, the name, what did you call it, Ben?
I think I asked for an operations manager just because I had no idea. I don't know what the position looks like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
The truth is, I just need some help. I'm killing myself over here. And that's not a complaint. I'm happy to do it, but I'd like to amplify my efforts here.
Yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, and that's the right way to say it is there's only so much that one person can do alone. And the biggest barrier, aside from exhaustion and killing your immune system and ending up with every disease that comes along, I having been there, but the biggest barrier is we have a short window of time in the evening when all the business gets done, right? And in practical terms, let's say it's from 5:30 to 7:30. So, and you could probably expand that to 4 to 8, but you have this narrow window of time that when there's only one person who's responsible in a school, teaching classes, handling parent conferences, doing enrollments, doing renewals, all the other stuff that we need to do becomes a difficulty, right? Now, the job description role is the one we talked about. I think it was yesterday, Master Smith. And by the way, even though it was the higher level meetings, I went ahead and posted both recordings, I believe, in the Facebook group because I thought they were useful for everybody. So the Tuesday meeting specifically, we did an awful lot of conversation about referrals because that was Stephen DiCastillo's question. And then we did some conversation about what people's actual results are for the year to date. And, we've got a couple schools that, that have been kind of stagnant this year. I mean, in all reality, if you look at your numbers, you have to be up 7% to be even. I mean, because that's the inflation rate, right? So if you're not up 7%, you're really down. But we have a lot of schools that are way up this year, and certainly an awful lot of schools that from 20 to 21, doubled the number. And pretty much everybody that we work with was back to pre-COVID numbers by 2021, and an awful lot of people were up actually during COVID. So, there's that element too. But Ben, on the actual job description thing, and I'll make it fairly short, but our conversation that's on that other recording was a little bit more comprehensive about the value of employee manuals and the value of putting together an extensive job description, all that stuff. But
And by the way, I can find that on the Facebook discussion.
yeah, it's the video from Wednesday and the video from Tuesday.
Just
Copy.
in our Facebook group, just go on the Facebook.
Yeah, in the group, not the page. But here's the short answer to your question. When you're a solo operator running a school, my preference always is to get somebody who can teach the majority of the classes first. And the industry wisdom, going back through, the old days of NAPNA and so forth, oftentimes were the opposite. There was, when I took over NAPNO, it was all this conversation, all these programs about hiring a program director and hiring somebody who could sell on one thing or another. And I always thought it was the complete opposite direction. I basically, if Bob remembers, issued an edict to, have a bonfire with all that crap. When you're running the school, the hardest thing to delegate is having the actual renewal conference and closing the renewal conference. The second, let me say that differently. The first hardest thing to delegate is marketing strategy and setting up marketing activities, right? So you go set up the movie theater, you can delegate running the booth, but you have to go get that stuff set up. You go build a relationship with the elementary school, you can have people do pieces of it, but you have to go set it up. And it's very difficult. I always had, with multiple schools, with six schools, I oftentimes had a marketing director who went and did it because my individual branch managers wouldn't do it. In fact, I was laughing my ass off. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal about a blind and tile franchise organization. And the head of the organization said blatantly in this article about them in the Wall Street Journal that their hardest difficulty was getting the owners of the tile stores, the franchisees, to go build relationships with general contractors, because 90% of their volume would come from the general contractors, and the owners would sit in the tile shop and wait for business to come to them. And so the franchisor actually hired people who would go into the market and go build relationships with all the contractors to hand it off to the franchisees, because they couldn't get the franchisees to do the single most important marketing tool in the thing. I was laughing my ass off going, yeah, I recognize that. But Ben, the first thing that you got to not delegate for a long time is marketing director. The second thing is sitting down and closing renewals. The third thing is prepping the renewal. Fourth thing is sitting down and closing the enrollment. And the fifth thing, which maybe should be higher on the list, is making sure that every lead gets into the pipeline and gets handled. Because I will tell you, having staff handling incoming Facebook leads and stuff like that, things fall through the cracks pretty quickly, and then the ratios fall through the cracks pretty quickly. Does that make sense? Now, if those are like the most important things that you can't let go of in the short term, what that means is you can't be stuck on the floor 30 hours, 35 hours, 40 hours a week teaching, right? Now, you can certainly be whatever term you want to use, right? A Krav school is going to use a different term than a Muay Thai school, than a Taekwondo school. But to use the traditionalist terms, you can be the master instructor, be visible in every class, be in there and start the class, pull them all together in the middle and rev them up and point them in directions, pull them together at the end and give rewards. You can do all of that. And then a 45-minute or an hour class becomes 7 minutes, not an hour, right? And that frees you up to do the other things. And also, if you keep in mind that if you're hiring somebody not to abdicate the floor, but to facilitate the floor when you're still pulling the strings, it makes putting the person in that position much easier. Does that make sense? So if it were me, I'm looking for a head instructor. Now, what's the job description of a head instructor? Any and everything that's needed for the school to thrive. Anything that we need to grow the school, to add more students, to keep students, and to maximize the revenue. That's their job description. And if that means they have to clean the toilet bowls at the end of the night, if that means they have to clean the front doors 3 times a night with Windex, and if that means they have to show up at a movie theater with me and make appointments, all of that's in their job description, right? So when I'm doing a job description, that's the job description. Your role is any and everything we need to do to make sure this business thrives. What do I do primarily? Well, primarily, you're making sure that every intro loves martial arts. You're making sure that every new student loves this and sets their goal to be a black belt so that we can renew them within 2 months. And you're making sure that our dropout rate is less than 1 or 2% a month. And you're making sure that our graduation rate from belt to belt is as close to 100% as you can. I mean, those are the primary metrics. But if you want to know what your job is, it's anything that needs to be done on the school. Well, what are my hours? Well, we have classes every day from 4 to 8 or from, whatever time it is. So we've all got to be here for all the classes. We've got to be here hour before the classes. We've got to be here 30, 45 minutes after classes to wrap up and clean up and all that stuff. And then our next role is marketing. So there's going to be days we're going to be in an elementary school all day, and there's going to be days and you can, go have a late lunch, go to a movie and be at the school at 3. I mean, there's both of those things. So, and it's also why you want people on a salary plus a commission incentive, not on hourly, because you want them to live or thrive, have the same pain and the same opportunities you do, right? So I'd rather have somebody who's making, let's say, 10% of the gross off, compared against a base minimum salary. And, some weeks they may work 30 hours and some weeks they may work 70 hours.
What percentage of the gross did you say, Master Oliver?
10. Yeah. But for a full timer. Does that help out, Ben?
Quite a bit. I'm just banging out notes here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and go listen to that Wednesday meeting we did as well. I think you'll pick up a lot more on that too.
Will do. Thank you.
You bet. Other quick question before I run out of time for my
I had one other thing, Master Oliver.
Go ahead.
Something we talked about on Wednesday and maybe Tuesday too. And Paul posted some of that information that I thought was very beneficial for our members. We talked about how important to do those kind of things. And it was talking about, your first phase is to really start tracking your numbers. And the second phase is to learn how to interpret your numbers. And then, of course, the third thing is to put those interpretations into action that produce results. And Paul has definitely made some good headway on that with a couple of posts he did. Maybe Bob, you can make him where he can share his screen, or maybe you can go to our members' Facebook and pull that up, Bob. And then I'd like Paul just to take a few minutes and explain it.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, here, why don't I make you co-host, Paul, if you know where that's at, and might go a little bit faster. And you can share your screen.
All right. Which one do you want to start with, sir? The marketing recap or the total numbers?
Let's do the marketing recap first, because the thing that we talked about Tuesday and Wednesday, and it really is really a major emphasis we try to make on our Quick Start members, is to get your marketing under control and understand your marketing. And there's no better way to do it than, number one, tracking your leads, but knowing where those leads came from and know the results of those leads that came from that source is very important. So maybe you can explain that form to us there, Paul.
Yes, sir. We keep, just if it helps anybody out, I keep a monthly tally that we actually print out and keep at the desk under our stat sheet. So as things come in, we can do check marks as they go. I got a phone call from this, I got an intro showed from that. So we keep it continuously as we go throughout the year. The next year I just create a copy of this spreadsheet. So every month I have to erase the previous year's marketing things to remind me a little bit. And then we just did a summary for the enrollments. First thing that pissed me off was we were about 15 shy. So we've got to get a little better at making the check marks, right? There's it said 121, it was really 135 or so enrollments. And then we just went down the source, which, is like you guys always say, is a little bit of an art form, because they come in, they tell you that, 30 ways they've heard of you. So sometimes it's a little more automatic when it comes through on the digitally, we can look it up and see where they came, but 20 of them from the Google ad, 17 from referrals, Reactivation is just the various, sending out text messages to old students, mailings to old students. So reactivation, we call it when a former student comes in and re-enrolls. Facebook ad, B-Day parties, and then you see a bunch of different types of special events in here as well. Some of them cross over. A little email, text message, old leads is not really reactivation. That was probably intros that didn't enroll. A couple of times a month, we're trying to send out text message blasts and things of that nature. So yeah, otherwise it's pretty self-explanatory. Most of what you see in here is special events, tablings, things that come up, different places where I could get a flyer out, just anything that you can do, including the stuff that didn't really reach much.
And I tell you what's so good about this, and what I really liked about it is it kind of reinforces what Master Oliver has been telling everybody, is that you can't put all your eggs in one basket and don't rely on any one or two sources, but you have to do that Parthenon. It's all those different things that you do that will all generate a few enrollments. And that's how you end up. And Paul had I would say, and you correct me if I'm wrong, a record year this year, and
Financially, yes.
and right at the million mark. Is that correct?
I won't talk yet. I got
Yeah.
lots of prepays out there to try to
Well,
hit that. million mark.
last we knew,
Still talking.
we needed 50.
Yeah.
To,
Still
post it.
working,
Yeah.
still working. I'm not done yet. I might be texting people on New Year's Eve, but I'm still working.
Yeah. We've been known to show up at Christmas parties and New Year's parties, collect checks. So
Yeah. Trying to get the million, but it'll be just shy. It was about 750 last year and about 500 the years prior, and 450-ish before joining the group.
Yeah.
So, and joined the group in 2019 at about 450, and in what's supposed to be 3 of the worst years for our industry ever, almost double.
Yeah.
well, you got a
That's,
50% jump and a 50% jump, so you cannot beat that.
Yeah, and I think everybody should give him a hand on that one. In this, as he said, for most martial arts schools around the country, the last few years have been the hardest years of their career. And during that time, he was able to take 450 and bring it up to 950 and above for this year. So.
Although to be a little contrary to what Master Oliver said, when you do a report like this, I could have beaten those numbers if I had converted more of these people. This report pisses me off a little bit with some of the low numbers. So, happy, never satisfied.
Well, that was going to be my only critique of that. Is it'd be a very useful exercise to go back and create 2 more columns here, and to do the how many leads were generated from each source, how many appointments were generated from each source, I guess 3, and then how many intros were generated from each source. We just went through our internal numbers that way, and we found a wide disparity in conversion between different sources.
Right.
And by the way, an awful lot of disparity was based upon internal staff inefficiency and internal systems failures. Right. So by looking at it based upon,
And list those and say those things one more time for Master Oliver, because they are very important. And I know you had them on your report that you were going over.
yeah.
And Paul, I think this would definitely benefit.
Well, and to begin with, this is great, Paul, because at the very least, you're getting a real-time look at, it really is the Parthenon. It's if you got a bunch of crap going on, a bunch of good stuff happens, right? And by the way, a lot of the Google ads are going to be an outcome of all the other stuff.
Yes.
Right. So that even they are going to be. We find a lot of people Facebook ads drive Google ads. We find that lots of the other activities are going to drive people finding you on Google, and oftentimes they're going to find you by, searching some portion of your name, or you're just searching martial arts school and then remembering that it was you. And by the way, I always knew for years, and I had a number of the schools confirm that for me. The more aggressive I was on marketing, the better all the other schools in my area did. They were always mad when I pulled TV budget for instance, because it bled over to everybody. But no, what I was saying is some of these deals are going to have a, and I'm trying to pick an example, but you might have a, like an after-school program. I tracked how many kids are in the school, how many kids registered for the program. And so now I have a metric for how effectively we promoted it. Then the next measure was how many of them came into the school, how many of them enrolled. On all of these things, it's useful to know how many of them became a lead. And if there's a predecessor number, like on Google, you have how many people landed on the page, what the opt-in percentage was, right? So you can go back a step and say, we had, what's the number there? 120, 20 enrollments, but you might have had 500 unique visitors, 70 opt-ins, 30 appointments, and it helps you figure out what things you can maximize. But again, this is great, is the number of schools that we ever get to be this detailed at this level is 1%.
And all we have to do is export it because I keep that.
Yeah.
I haven't filled it out. We keep the, intro showed, the lead stat can be a little messy sometimes. You
Yeah,
got a phone call inquiry today. Great. Where was it from? Oh, crap. I didn't get that. I just got the appointment. So there's a little GIGO in some of that, but
Yeah.
We definitely can export it so we can find leads, intro scheduled, intro shows, and enrollments.
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about, is this is really good. And that number of attended can go with a number of events, right? Is the Holy Trinity trunk or treat. I might know that 5,000 people showed up, or I might know that 100 people showed up. How we did depends upon whether it was 100 or 5,000, right? The PTA class would be a similar thing.
Yeah.
This is a school of 700 kids, this is a school of 70 kids. Well, that's going to affect your perception of how it did.
Oh, good. I'll add those columns next year. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you bet. But no, this is great. It really gives you some good insight.
And your other one, Paul?
Sure. I think I gotta, let's see, stop sharing. And should be this one.
And the thing to remember is that you see, when people hear about our members going from 450,000 to 950,000 plus, sometimes they don't realize, sometimes they just think, oh, they just lucky, or they're in a good area, or they come up with what I call their excuses, right? Why they can't make it, or why they're not able to do it, rather than if you look back and you see how much work he's actually been doing and how he's not letting what I call the ship drive itself, but he's got everything under control. He's analyzing everything, making changes appropriately, finding out where he's been so he knows where he's going. I call that taking control of your school. And nothing drives a school's growth up, as I commented on when you made your post, Paul. When you do these things that you're doing, and then you put the results into action, in other words, you do those 3 phases of the stats that I was talking about, then you will always be green and growing. That means that your gross will be going up, your active count will be going up, as long as you're doing what you're doing. It's when you think you've arrived and you can let it run itself is when things either flatline or they start going downhill. So congratulations on this awesome job.
And a good example of that with the previous one, I looked at the birthday party line and I'm like, man, that's just way too low. And I asked the group when we had our meeting, I'm like, you guys are still making that confirmation call the night before, right? And crickets. Oh, come on. Okay. Well, all right. Starting the first of the year, we'll go over the details of, you get that whole, I thought the other person did it thing. So definitely analyzing it, even great operations you put in originally, everything slides, people get lazy.
Yeah.
This sheet for our regular numbers, what we did, we took this off you guys' website. Actually, I think it's up on, so we copied the the form, you guys had this up. if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
that was Lynn Bassard created that from our original form.
Okay. And we altered a little bit for us. What we do in the studio, I've got my 2 print one. It's on a clipboard at the desk. You don't put your shoes on till you make your check marks. So we even have a person that answers the phone at home, and she has this at her house too, to make the check marks for all the incoming calls. So that's how we get it tracked, and then you just dump it into the spreadsheet,
Go back one more time. That sheet you just had,
the one that we print.
the one, yeah, see the bottom? Talk about that, because I think people miss that little part at the bottom. What it says, what each of those lines are, because I've had people not do them, and then I say, how come you didn't do that? And they go, well, I didn't know what that was.
Sure.
So make sure everybody, and tell them real quick what each of those are, Paul.
Yeah, that's language and definitions is important. For us, we call a lead when we get their information. Somebody shows up for a birthday party, you know, at the booth, things like that. We've gathered their information. An inquiry is when the phone rings or a web lead comes in. Somebody was contacting us specifically looking for karate. Obviously, your conversion rate between those two are different, right? You want a much higher conversion rate in the inquiries. And then first intro schedule for its intro completed. I put those two on there to help compare things across, because you know, you do a Halloween booth, it's the end of October, you get a zillion appointments in October, but all the intros are scheduled for November because you're there at the end of October. So then I can actually see a live capture in the month, how our show rate is. Then first class scheduled, first class completed. Are they coming back from that first intro? So I can measure whether or not the program director is actually doing a good job or not. And again, by having scheduled and completed, it's more of a live picture of that. And then of course, enrollment conferences, enrollments, renewal conferences, renewals.
And I tell you, that part right there, I've had so many schools get disappointed in their leads to enrollments when they say, well, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I have so many leads, but I'm not getting any enrollments. And then we go down each one of these lines, and then we see where the holes in the bucket are. And that's why it's important to know these, so you can find out where the holes are. You know, for some of them, they weren't even tracking how many conferences they had. And when they actually tracked it, what we found is that they didn't have any holes till they got to enrollment conferences. And then these are the people that finished the enrollments, and then they had a very low enrollment percentage. And then we analyzed it and found out that was because they had a very low percentage of enrollment conferences, but of the ones they actually talked to, they had a very high percentage. So this really helps you analyze what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right, where you need to focus more attention. So that's why step one, keep your numbers. Step two, analyze the numbers. Step three, put things into action that are going to help fix those numbers. Thank you, Paul. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Back to it for the year then. Oh,
Yeah,
this, our
no,
stats too, every Monday meeting, we lead with it. And, you know, different people are responsible. Everyone's responsible for all of them, but, you know, some people are more responsible for more. My head instructor doesn't answer the phone that much, but the lady who does is more responsible. And they know we go over the stats, you know, with high fives or what's going on. You know, every Monday. That's it. We start the meeting on Monday with last week's stats, you know, to see where things are
Perfect.
dropping off.
I love it. That's exactly what we did for 25 years with the junior, right, Master Oliver?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Paul,
don't get us.
we even went so far, because it was 12 schools, that we had them set in line based on if they were in first place or last place. And last place was almost like the dunce seat with the hat, right?
Yeah, it was one step short of sit on a stool with a dunce cap on. You never wanted to show up a meeting on June Reed's left, because you
Yeah.
were going to get a tirade if you were on Junri's left. If you were on Junri's right, which was the good end, you were in Clover. And if you were at the left, which from the Curse of Alexandria was me a number of times, it was not the place to be. Anyway, Paul, we got to shift gears.
Yes, sir.
But if you would go back to that other sheet for a minute with the year-to-date sources, I just wanted to point something out to anybody who missed
Your
it.
Parthenon.
Exactly. I count, maybe I counted wrong. I had counted 33 different sources. Looks like it may be actually more than that. How many different Oh, there we go. 34 minus, there's a couple of header rows. So 32
Yeah.
or 33.
About 42 in total. Some of them down here.
Oh,
don't
there
have
you go.
marks on them, but we did them,
Okay.
you
So
know.
40 different things in total. I might add your family add-on number is embarrassing, but
I think that's my missing, because I'm missing close to 15 enrollments from this stat sheet
there you
that
go.
didn't get accounted for. I was looking at that too. I think that's actually I know we did a
Yeah.
lot more than that.
It could well be, but no, this is great, Paul. I just wanted to point out how many different things you have going on. And it doesn't seem like the marketing secret, but you know, I've told hundreds of people, for God's sake, just do more stuff. And they're always, well, what's the magic bullet? There's no damn magic bullet. Just do more stuff. And just add to it and add to it, add to it. Some of it works, you know, great. Some of it works for shit. A lot of the things that didn't work, it feels like on paper, got the other stuff to work. If you just do more stuff, you get more traffic. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Sure.
And my rule, Willie Smash Oliver, was I don't care what you do, as long as you got to have at least 20 to 30 enrollments, and you have to have your dropout down to under 2 to 3%. And if you can do that, then I don't care what the hell you do, but that's what you got to do. And now some schools would have to do 5 times more than somebody else to get that same results, and others wouldn't have to do as much. But that's why when a school says, wow, I just don't have any enrollments and I'm marketing, it's just not working. And then I go through the actual marketing things they're doing, and they're doing about 3 or 4 marketing things, thinking they're doing a lot of stuff.
Well,
So-
and often they're the things that are least likely to pull any results.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you'll notice, when we're talking about stats and stuff, 99.9% of the time, our million-plus schools are all the ones that have the best control of their numbers. That's knowing what they are, analyzing them, and implementing actions to improve them. So you newbies out there, when they say, well, I'm just a single school operation, I don't really need to know those numbers because I really kind of know what they are. No, you have to really have them down like this to analyze them, just like his other sheet had the month-to-month numbers to analyze.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then you can stop sharing that now, Paul. Thank you
thanks,
so
Paul.
much for that, Paul. That was excellent.
Yes, sir.
Everybody find that valuable? And I'll whine a little bit. Everybody make sure you got your video camera on. You start to remind me of the days of doing those damn teleconference deals that we used to do forever.
I didn't even
Uh,
notice mine wasn't on. I was there.
I still have nightmares about doing teleconferences because, you know, you really end up feeling like you're talking to yourself. It's like, you know, being in an auditorium, not knowing if there's anybody there or not.
And
But-
I like Delfino's the best because he reminds me of the TV show with the guy that has the over
yeah,
the.
we're gonna have to do some basic lessons in how to point your camera at the right place, and some lighting things as well. Okay, we only have about 29 minutes. I will remind everybody that we have the Florida meeting coming up in February. It was we missed going to Clearwater last year because Florida was so busy, but the a number of meetings leading up, there was there was practically a petition and half of a riot with people wanting to go back to their favorite meeting spot ever. And it's not a spot where we're doing a tour of West Point or Annapolis or Disney or so forth, but it is the most beautiful location we've done. It's right on the Gulf, on what is described by many as the most beautiful beach in North America, if not the most beautiful beach anywhere. Beautiful white powdery sand. We have a meeting room that looks out over the beach.
Hence the name Clearwater Beach.
Yeah, Clearwater Beach and the Sand Pearl Hotel. But I will warn you, even though we managed to pull it off this year, that hotel is, I think, pretty much booked up already, and the surrounding hotels. Well, the way I discovered the Sand Pearl, to tell you the truth, is the Hilton is where NAPNA had done with their world conferences. And the first big event we did when I took over, we went back to the Hilton and did a big event at the Hilton. But I stayed at the Sand Pearl, and they're literally next door to each other. So you can walk out the back of the Hilton and you're one building over from the Sand Pearl and vice versa. And Bob, you posted a list of 600 Clearwater Beach hotels. There's plenty of options there, but I would book something pretty quickly here, just so that you're in good shape for the meeting. The second
There's a
thing,
ton of Airbnb and VRBOs going on in this area too, so, yeah, and many talents. I mean, everything's really in close proximity. There's you've got Largo, Dunedin, quite a few just out off of the Clearwater Beach area, so you'd be 5 minutes away.
That's right. That's right. The one other thing that I'll add as a reminder is, as of about the time this meeting is done, I'm not going to be accessible by text, email, phone, meeting, carrier pigeon, tweet, Facebook Messenger, LinkedIn Messenger, or any other damn sideways. Somebody else I'm working with just made me sign up on Telegram. I'm not going to be on Telegram, and even not going to be reading faxes, although we only have a fax number anymore for, we get faxes from Dan Kennedy and nobody else in the world. So, and we don't have any meetings next week. The week of Christmas, we don't have any meetings between Christmas and New Year's, and we'll be back on a normal schedule the following week. Although Master Smith, as a note, I won't be on either the Tuesday or Thursday meetings. Now, my checklist for the end of the year here, I'm going to go through these quickly, but I want to make sure that we get to it here before we wrap up. Checklist point number 1. January 1st is the marvelous, perfect time to raise your prices substantially. And what we see with our more established schools, including the $1 million schools, is usually they're not charging enough. I might say always, but there may be some exceptions. Usually they're not charging enough for their highest level program, for the leadership program. Almost always they're not charging enough for their black belt or whatever they call it in between the two. And keep in mind, my rule of thumb is whatever the initial tuition is, for leadership to be double or more on the real payment that they pay, not the high number that you make up to give them a discount, but the real number, right? So if you bring them in the door charging $347 a month, leadership should be, $697 or $747 or something like that. It should be double, and I'm serious as a heart attack on that. And what I do see on the high end schools do is they will make the leadership price too low, and then everyone they renew ends up in leadership, and then they think they don't need the fallback position. And then they'll tell me very proudly, we're doing such a good job on renewals, we don't need a fallback, everybody has a high level program. Well, dummy, the reason they're doing the high level program is you haven't pushed the price point enough on leadership. The point was always about half of the renewals fall back to the less expensive option. And we've never gotten anywhere near that. As we push it and push it and push it, I think the lowest we've gotten is maybe 75% leadership, 25% to the lower level. So that's number 1. Number 2, your initial tuition for people coming in the door. I would like for each and every one of you to break even on every enrollment on the way in the door, and make a lot more money on the day they enroll so that you're more comfortable with spending a lot more money in your marketing efforts. And Paul, one of the things I saw on your list is the vast majority of everything you're doing is not paid media type of stuff other than Facebook and Google. You're going to get to a point where you'd like to have more traffic, and you'd like to have more traffic from paid sources rather than from labor. And so if you're doing 500 initially plus 347 a month, so they pay 847 initially. Well, it's easy to feel comfortable spending $800 to get a new student, and then just the day they enroll, you've paid for the marketing cost. On the other hand, if you're doing pay nothing now, train for 30 days, if you like it, pay your first payment of 147. Very hard to do any sophisticated marketing. The retention rate is low, the renewal rate is low, all kinds of bad things happen. So I would highly recommend that everybody here be at least at $297 a month for your monthly tuition on a trial enrollment. We have a number of schools now, they're in the 347, probably pushing to 397 a month range. You've got to charge whatever it is that you have the balls to get to and to ask for, but really being in the 297 a month range, we've proven over and over and over again it works. Some of you are in very expensive markets, Sal in San Diego, etc. Ben in what do you call it, North Central California,
Northern California,
you call it Northern? Okay, so
Sonoma County.
yeah, there you go. I think of Eureka as Northern California, so you got to adjust my geography. But that's way north. That's border of Oregon. But anyway, I would recommend you be at least at that point. And the best thing to do now and in the first of the year is role play with everybody, get really comfortable with it, get comfortable with it yourself, and then make the leap. And the difference is enormous. Is we have an awful lot of, and by the way, kind of industry lore about me and Master Smith is all we tell people to do is raise the prices, which is not true in any way, shape, or form. However, the difference between charging 147 and 347 literally is you make the same revenue with about a third of the number of students, and with the same number of students, you make about triple the revenue, right? So not quite triple, but it's a huge difference. And as you push the tuition rates, what happens is you improve the retention rates and you improve the student quality. And the more you have the Parthenon of marketing feeding people in, and to the most extent you can be overwhelmed with traffic, one, the easier it is for you to charge the higher tuitions, and the more likely they are to pay it because it's the bandwagon effect. Somebody comes into a full school and they say, well, they seem to be charging a lot, but everybody else in our neighborhood seems to be paying it and enjoying it. So it must be the right thing. So it feeds off itself. Everybody so good enough so far? Got the idea? Any question or thought on that before I hit my next point quickly? No? Okay. Master Smith, the ones who think I'm full of shit are too cowardly to argue. And everybody else is just trying to take it in. So to get the dynamic right. The next point is what we already hit with Paul, and on 2 points is one, start keeping really good numbers. Two, between now and the holidays, review what's happened for the year to date. And the more you get stuck in not really knowing what happened year to date, the more you start figuring out how important it is to keep track, right? So, we did a thorough review of our numbers and found some holes in even being able to recreate stuff. We also found some systems that I thought were working that weren't working. Mail that was going out that wasn't going out, voicemails that were going out that weren't going out, and so forth. And, systems break more easily than they're created. So you've got to always be looking for that. Just, Paul, as you talked about, is your staff forgot to confirm things on the night before they did this, right? And so do a review of everything that's happened year to date. It can be encouraging if your numbers are up, but it can be discouraging as you were finding, Paul, you've had a record cash year and you're pissed off about a number of things. Well, the best way to grow next year is to be pissed off about a number of things. So it shows you where opportunities are, right? The worst place to be is go through all the numbers and not see any place where you can improve. And if you ever come to that conclusion, you're missing the point, because there's always something you can improve, including the throughput in the top of the funnel, or the average revenue per person that you're bringing in. The second thing, and this is, or I think I'm on 3 or 4 now. So number 1 was raise your prices first of the year. Number 2 was do a review of the year to date and see what's going on and see what gaps are missing in your knowledge. Find opportunities, figure out where your gaps are. And figuring out where your gaps are gives us a chance to go through and figure out how to improve them at the beginning of the year. The next thing is get really good at keeping your numbers. So I'll make that point number 3, I guess. Point number 4 is the other point that we were making with Paul, but to accelerate it and make it even more vital, you've got to launch right after Christmas a massive marketing blitz. And you've got to start the first of the year with huge enrollment numbers, and I mean the first week of the month. And what I would see with my own schools, and that's why from a paid marketing standpoint, Paul, it's easier to control, going back to that statement earlier, is I would throw a lot of money into newspaper, TV, mail right after Christmas through to about Valentine's Day. But I was knowing that even my schools that were good at being out hustling were probably not good at hustling between December 15th and January 10th, right? So I tried to drive as much traffic as humanly possible. The second thing I knew is media costs are high in December because you're fighting Christmas. Media costs plummet right after Christmas. So, like Paul, you didn't enroll a lot of people. You enrolled some. I mean, it was like number 3 or 4, but you could throw a lot more money at Facebook, as a for instance, in January and right after Christmas. And the most fruitful time in Facebook will likely be in January. So probably the slowest time. I talked to Kate a week ago, and December numbers were holding up better than either one of us would have expected. But January is much more responsive than December. For instance, I wouldn't go through all your prospects and do a direct mail campaign in all likelihood after Thanksgiving. But the first of the year and that right after Christmas, I'd go through every prospect we had, at least going back a year or 2, that didn't enroll. And I would mail to them after Christmas. I'd mail to them the 1st of January. I'd mail to them maybe 5, 6, 7 times in January, and really saturate that list with direct mail. And I would email to them twice a day. And I would text to them 2 or 3 times a week. And I would put somebody on the list and start at the top and work my way to the bottom, start at the top, work my way to the bottom, and do outbound calls to them all. And I would do automated broadcast voicemail. Call Loop does what's called ringless voicemail. So it doesn't ring their phone. It goes straight to voicemail. So they don't know that it's a robocall. They'll see the phone number there, but sometimes you get them to call back just because they saw a missed call. Other times it's just going straight to their voicemail. So you do all of that stuff with your prospect list to jumpstart the beginning of the year. And again, for our industry, January can be your best month of the year. But if you're not careful, what happens in January is week 3 and week 4 are really good. Week 1 and week 2 are really crappy. And you get a slow start. So therefore you have 2 of your best weeks of the year, but you have a really mediocre month. Don't do that. The way to have a strong month is to start strong. I always try to make sure whatever my cash target number was, the goal was to hit it by the end of the first week of the month. See, if your goal is, pick a number, 100,000 for the month, and the billing check comes in and you can make up the difference by the first week of the month, it's a fun month, right? You're cranking for the month. On the other hand, if you're working the last 2 or 3 days to try to hit your numbers, doesn't mean you shouldn't do that. But if you're working to hit the bills or working to pay off the credit card or working to hit your investment goals, whatever it was, and have to hit the the last 2 or 3 deposits at the end of the month in order to hit that. That's the wrong way to be working. Always try to start the month off strong, but it's never more important than January. Questions or thoughts on any of those before we move on? No?
Yes, sir. I was talking to Kate and about the Facebook, and she recommended right after the new year. But I don't know if you chatted with her to do it right after Christmas.
I think it depends on your staffing and your situation to a small extent, right? If I really double down on my budget the day after Christmas, I have 2 things going at once. I have a lot of them are out of town on the holidays, one thing or another. On the flip side of it, what I've got is people are kind of sitting around for the week. The kids are out of school for the week, and they're paying attention more to that stuff. And I do know that, the busiest time of the shopping malls is like the day after Christmas, but really most of the media budgets and stuff have been pulled within a day or 2 after Christmas and so forth. So it depends. Sometimes I didn't do, like if we were doing TV, I wouldn't launch TV until the following week because I didn't really have anybody there to handle intros because usually we had the school shut down for that week. So
Well,
you've got
what if I was going to close down that week of during the Christmas week to New Year's, but I mean, obviously I'm not closed myself. I could just be setting up the appointments, but we won't be doing any martial arts classes because the last 2 or 3 years we'd had like a trickle of 2 or 3 students would show up. So I could set it up if you think that's best for January 2nd, which is the first Monday right after.
Well, I would say, and Master Smith and I debate on this from time to time, but I agree with him. I have a slightly different take. I was always doing massive renewal blitz up to a week before Christmas, and then giving them the final week to clean up, which is, in other words, to get anybody who was, right on the fence. But then if they hit their numbers, I was giving them from Christmas to New Year's off. The flip side of that is, I'm my friend Greg Silva from years ago, he did the most of his, a huge number of renewals. I won't say most necessarily, but he did a huge number of renewals on Thanksgiving Day. The week between Christmas and New Year's really is a time that you can do renewals and enrollments for the people who are around and can do it. Matt Smith, I know you've had a number of really strong weeks between Christmas and New Year's. And in part because it gives you the ability to focus. Your class attendance numbers are down, but it gives you the ability to stack up appointments and to clean up. So, Sal, in your case, knowing the behind the scenes of your staff and all that stuff, I would try to generate another 50 grand that week. And, line up everybody who's not out of town, line up enrollment conferences, line up renewal conferences, stack up the cash flow, all of that stuff. There's no reason no reason not to really maximize your results during that period of time.
Yeah, we're still open. We're just not doing martial arts lessons.
Yeah, and here was my thinking, Master Oliver, and why we did it that way. I always had December as our biggest grossing month of the year, ellipsing everything. And one of the reasons I didn't want everybody not to enjoy Christmas. And, we always closed on Christmas Eve and Christmas. But that week between Christmas and New Year, I had the follow-up on the renewals. And I made that week kind of like what we call the summer, like spring break, by having special classes, board breaking training, foam chuck classes.
Kind of like summer.
Yeah, made it all fun kind of stuff. So if you come in that week, it's all fun and games, right? It's not regular hardcore training. Well, the reason I did that is that we made it a buddy time. And during that Christmas, kids don't have anything to do. They're like stuck at home. There's no school going on. So they're all are free to come in for classes. So we always had a big buddy referral time. Everybody who came in for the buddy day back then, we were giving them, like you said, Master Oliver, we gave them that gift certificate, this big, in a foiled envelope, made it a big value, where they got a month of lessons and a uniform for everybody who came in buddy week in that week of Christmas. So we would end up January getting a lot of enrollments from those buddy days. And the buddy days were very successful because they weren't regular classes. They were fun classes. I didn't need every one of my normal instructors to be there. If somebody needed to go visit relatives or something and be gone that week, we would have our part-timers filling in because they weren't going to school at that time. So I had my part-timers because I wasn't really trying to do a lot of enrollments during that time. I just needed the classes going on, having fun, while I did renewal conferences in the office and set up appointments for intros and handle the buddy referrals. So again, that was my thinking of why I did that. And, if you want to do something like that, if you don't plan anything and you don't make it a fun week, if you don't make it a buddy thing, well, then you're just kind of spinning wheels that didn't really, go ahead and close if you're not going to work it. But if you're going to work it, make it productive. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody have any questions on Paul's stuff or what Master Oliver was covering? Because this is all very, very critical, very important information to take your frame of mind and your goal setting and keeping track of your stats for next year.
Yeah.
If you have a question, stick a hand up or unmute yourself.
Yeah, and Matt Smith, to emphasize what you were saying, one of the methods behind my madness was with a big staff. I mean, I topped out at over 50 people, full and part-timers, which kind of got me to the point of, gun in my mouth if I hired 51 and 52, to tell you the truth. But I basically gave them 2 to 3 weeks of vacation a year based upon them earning it by results. So they got the week of July 4th. They got, in most cases, a week and a half to 2 weeks over Christmas. And very rarely did I give them a week off anywhere else. And the, consideration when they were hired is, if you perform well, you get 2 to 3 weeks of vacation time every year. And it's this times, of course, if their sister was getting married, they could go do that or something. But what I was always finding is it seemed inevitable that they would want the week off the first or second week in September, or they'd want the week off, it's always whenever our busiest time was, always the most inconvenient time. And it was a reason for me to give them paid vacation time without it being a disruption to the business, was the other method to my madness on that, Master Smith. But I want everybody to anchor what you said is, all you have to do is find out, what students are in town, what students are out of town. They're all out of school. You figure out who's in town, and then you can do all kinds of special things and get them to bring buddies. And, just as many, I know a lot of the daycares and different things, they have camps and big, because if the parents have to work that period of time, they're looking for things for the kids to do. And you can do all kinds of special events and so forth. My emphasis would be, if it were me, would be, I'm going to create cash, I'm going to create renewals, I'm going to create enrollments. And what is it that I can do between Christmas and New Year's to do that? And in our, which is the more advanced schools, but in our renewal related period, there's always a lot of people who could have gotten done if you didn't run out of time. And the ones that are in town, it gives you a marvelous opportunity to clean those up. And I'd much rather get them done on December 27th than push it into January. So that's my last thought on that.
And I was just going to give everybody a quick update on our paid in full contest that we were doing. we got a couple new people on the scoreboard. Sal jumped on the board with 10,600. I guess that was this week or yesterday. And then also Sebastian jumped on in the last 5 days. He did 22,000. So our combined total so far with our top 10 was we're at 200,000 so far. And remember, our goal was to do 300. So we're still about 100 away. And this is a combined, just the paid in full portion, not your total gross for the month, just your paid in full. I wanted to see if we could generate our members $300,000 over December and November, holidays here. So we're about 2/3 of the way there. Again,
It's
Tim,
just that people have reported, yeah.
yeah, and again, if you haven't reported or this isn't your accurate amount, Tim Harrison's at 38,750, Paul Hellison at 27,343, Gustavo at 24,500, Steve Del Castillo 24,000, Sebastian 22,000, Jan at 21,300, Paul Pendergrass at 15,600. Marty Callahan jumped on the scoreboard too at 11,600, and Sal at 10,600. So if I didn't call your name, it's because I didn't see your post with your numbers. If I gave the wrong number, then correct it and post it on our Facebook page. I'll still be checking the Facebook pages over the holidays and keep it posted. If anybody has any questions over the holidays, it's okay to ask it by posting a question in the Facebook page is the best way. And then I'll be looking at that on a daily basis and hopefully maybe more than one time a day, and making comments on there for you. Any emergencies, you can send a text to Bob. And then he'll get it to the appropriate action, but emergencies only, please.
Yeah, anything that comes up, just post it in the Facebook group. And, the different pieces of the team will be in there at different times. So post it in there. The last thing I'll say is thank you for anybody on here who has already gone and done a review on that new book I did. It's very helpful. Anybody who hasn't, I'd love it if you would go buy a copy of the book so you can be a verified purchaser and give it a 5-star review. It does help and help get some momentum on that one. So yeah, I've posted in the group a couple times. I very much appreciate that. In the meantime, everybody have a very Merry Christmas, New Year's, Hanukkah, any other holidays you want to celebrate. Have a great holiday period. Hopefully you stay safe and get some relaxation.
And I hope Danny is feeling better. She looked a little under the weather, but I'm gonna tell you, she's the diehard. She's in there coughing and everything, but she's not contaminating any of us. I hope you stay muted so none of that came through the wire on you. But if anybody else, you hear, that's a dedicated staff right there. All the time you hear, well, I wasn't feeling well, so I didn't get on. No, she jumped in there and was giving her all attention to it as best she could. So I hope you're feeling better. No, she's still coughing. And everybody else stay healthy during this holiday period. Don't be catching anything, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And Master Smith, if you're worried about catching something on video conference when somebody is unmuted, I think
I have my rubber gloves on. I'm not worried.
Well, can I just say thank you to all three of you guys for the support and guidance throughout the year. So we really appreciate it, and it helps out in a lot of ways. So thank you for all your help, guys.
You bet. Sal, promise us you're going to finish strong and start strong.
You know me, the beating will continue until morale improves.
Yeah, we'll continue beating you until your morale improves. That is correct.
Okay, guys,
Yeah.
have a good holidays.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.